Taiwan's Acer delivered products to Russia until March. NATO's biggest ever air exercise over Europe to begin next week. Indonesia's HSR commercial operation delayed again. Fiji reconsiders security agreement with China. German and Indian companies sign accord on submarine project. Messi turns down $1.2 billion from Saudis and goes to Miami. Australia to ban swastikas and other Nazi symbols. Vladimir Putin was never a Soviet super spy.
Hello, I'm Johnny. Thank you for joining us on Funday News. It's Friday, June 9th, and here are your top stories. According to customs data seen by Reuters, Taiwan-based computer manufacturer Acer supplied at least $70.4 million worth of computer hardware to Russia between April 8, 2022 and March 31, 2023, after saying it would suspend its business there on April 8 last year. The records show that equipment produced by Acer was supplied to Russia both through Acer's wholly owned subsidiary registered in Switzerland and a number of delivery services by order of that subsidiary.
The company told Reuters it was possible that importers in Russia sourced Acer devices from third countries. Acer's Russian unit said, "Nothing has changed," since the April 2022 statement. Taiwan's Ministry of Economic Affairs said that as of the end of March 2023, Acer had not applied for such permits, and there are no Taiwanese customs records of Acer exporting to Russia. Reuters said that Acer made no deliveries of the recently prohibited items to Russia from Switzerland after December 16, 2022, which is in line with Swiss and European sanctions.
Germany is hosting NATO's biggest ever air exercise over Europe next week, with 250 planes from member countries simulating the alliance's response to an attack on Europe. Starting next week, the Air Defender 23 exercise will see 10,000 participants and 250 aircraft from 25 nations to respond to a simulated attack on a NATO member country. The United States alone is sending 2,000 U.S. Air National Guard personnel and about 100 aircraft to take part in the June 12th to 23rd training maneuvers.
The media reported that while the exercise has been planned for several years, Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 has jolted NATO into preparing in earnest for the possibility of an attack on its territory. Sweden, which is hoping to join the alliance, and Japan are also participating in the exercise. Director of the U.S. Air National Guard Lieutenant General Michael A. Lowe said, "It's about the readiness of our force. It's about coordination, not just within NATO, but with our other allies and partners outside of NATO."
Reuters cited an internal document that reported Indonesia's transport ministry and 3 consultants have pushed back on a China-funded consortium's plan to start full commercial operations of the country's $7.3 billion first high-speed train service in August. Instead, Indonesia's transport ministry and consultants, McDonnell, PwC, and local law firm Umbra, have suggested that full-fledged commercial operations may start in January 2024.
The 142 kilometers line from Jakarta to Bandung, being built by a consortium of Indonesian and Chinese state firms, is already $1.2 billion over the initial budget and 4 years behind schedule. But internal documents show the consortium's Chinese participants wanting a full operational worthiness certificate for the line despite an incomplete station. Indonesia is negotiating with China on an additional $560 million loan and asking for an interest rate of 2.8% for the portion of the loan that is in yuan.
Fiji's Prime Minister Stefani Rabuka said on Wednesday that his nation was reviewing a contentious police cooperation agreement it signed with China in 2011 that has allowed Chinese police officers to be stationed in Fiji. Rabuka said, "If our systems and our values differ, what cooperation can we get from them?" The Prime Minister added, "We need to look at that again before we decide whether we go back to it, or if we continue the way that we have in the past by cooperating with those who have similar democratic values and systems."
Rabuka said Fiji was finalizing a defense agreement with New Zealand, which it expected to complete next week. He said the new agreement would allow Fiji military to build its capacity and skill and be exposed to new technologies. Meanwhile, Former Prime Minister Frank Bainimarama and former Police Commissioner Sitiveni Kealiho, who oversaw the China policing agreement, now face criminal charges of abusing their power, as does former Attorney General Ayaz Sayed Kayam.
I always needed time on my own. I never thought I'd be here.
I take your blessings with your heartaches too. It's so easy and so wonderful to know it's you.
学习，一切从今天开始。Funday 英语。
German and Indian companies signed an agreement Wednesday that envisions the possible building of 6 military submarines for India. The memorandum of understanding was signed in the presence of German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius, who was in India on a visit. The agreement calls for Germany's ThyssenKrupp marine systems to engineer and design 6 non-nuclear submarines that will be built and delivered by India's Mazagon Dock shipbuilders with significant local content.
Pistorius advocates easing defense cooperation and weapons deals with India by treating it as a strategic partner like Australia or Japan. He pointed Wednesday to the importance of cooperating with partners that are like-minded in advocating a rules-based order and the security of sea routes. ThyssenKrupp Marine Systems said it delivered 4 submarines to the Indian Navy in the 1980s in cooperation with Mazagon and that the vessels are still in service today.
Soccer superstar Lionel Messi is officially turning down $1.2 billion from the Saudis because of his family. Messi on Wednesday surprisingly revealed his decision to join Inter Miami team that was led by David Beckham. Thanks to a deal involving millions of dollars from Apple Inc. and Adidas AG, Messi is joining Major League Soccer. Messi said, after winning the World Cup and not being able to return to Barcelona, it was my turn to go to the League of the United States to live football in another way.
According to the French newspaper L'Équipe, Messi and his wife Antonella Rocuzzo rejected the offer from the Saudis because they couldn't imagine raising their children in the Gulf. The U.S. Major League Soccer said, "We are pleased that Lionel Messi has stated that he intends to join Inter Miami and Major League Soccer this summer." But Spanish journalist Helena Condes reported Saudi Arabian club Al Hilal has made one last attempt at signing the 2022 World Cup winner, offering him a whopping €1.5 billion over 3 years.
Australia's Attorney General Mark Dreyfus said on Thursday that the government plans legislation to ban swastikas and other Nazi symbols nationwide due to an increase in far-right activity. Dreyfus said while most Australian states already ban such Nazi symbols, the federal law would go further by also banning the trade in such material. He added, "There's been a rise in this kind of violent far-right activity. We think it's time for there to be a federal law, which I will be bringing to the Parliament next week."
The law would include a penalty for people displaying Nazi symbols of up to a year in prison. But displaying symbols for religious, educational or artistic purposes would be among a range of exclusions from the ban. It will not affect the use of the swastika for people observing Hinduism, Buddhism and Jainism. Dreyfus said the number of neo-Nazis was small, but the Australian Security Intelligence Organisation had raised concerns about their activity in the past 3 years.
Investigation by the German news outlet Der Spiegel has revealed Russian President Vladimir Putin was likely never the elite Soviet spy that the world has been led to believe. Stories of Putin's exploits as an intelligence officer during the 1980s vary, and it is an era somewhat shrouded in mystery, as he has never commented on the period himself. However, according to Der Spiegel's report, the majority of Putin's work was actually limited to banal administrative tasks.
Citing one of Putin's former colleagues at the KGB's Dresden office, Der Spiegel says his work consisted primarily of endlessly reviewing applications for West German relatives' visits or searching for potential informants among foreign students at Dresden University. A former Stasi officer, Horst Gemlich, who also worked in Dresden, told Der Spiegel that Putin was nothing more than an errand boy. Putin worked for the KGB for nearly 2 decades. He moved to Dresden, in East Germany, in 1985.
Now let's take a look at the vocabulary of the news of Messi going to Miami. Number 1, Turn somebody down. 拒绝某人。I relish the challenge of doing jobs that others turn down. Number 2, whopping. 巨大的，很大的。The company made a whopping $75 million loss. Number 3, league. 品质、能力等，级别、水准。A house like that is out of our league. As a painter, he is in a league of his own. And that's all for today's Funday News. Be sure to tune into Funday News from Monday to Friday and click the link below to join Funday for free. I'm Johnny Wu, your host. I'll see you next time.